So, hey guys, I'm back. It's me, Unchanging Jimmy. How are y'all doing? It's been like however many months since I last uploaded. Hope you're all doing well. I've been a very busy summer, very busy time. I got into Magic the Gathering a lot. I've been doing a lot of not streaming. So if you happen to see me over on Twitch, thank you. That means a lot because I have not been streaming that much. And today's video is going to be discussing loops. Specifically, time loops and how those impact our lives. How it can feel like we're stuck looping. You know, like in a time loop. Again, name of the video. Come on, guys, it's pretty self-explanatory. A time loop story usually revolves around the concept of looping through time, either in a day or a set period of time. It can either be punctuated by you waking up and the time loop ending once you die. Basically, make it as far as you can before you die. Or the other one where you just wake up the same day over and over again. You wake up regardless of what you did in that day, starting the same day, if you even so much as fall asleep. Those are the two main concepts for time loops. There are some other ones that I talked about in a rambling video that I will probably never release. The time loop usually starts with the character in question in disbelief at the fact that, oh, deja vu. I lived through these moments already. Oh my goodness, I know what's going to happen. Oh my goodness, I remember dying. Oh my goodness, my friends are all dead. Oh my goodness. Or also just the other side of it is like, oh my goodness, I have no consequences. I can do whatever I want. Those two are usually fall into the different camps of time loops. The first one, where the time loop repeats once you die, usually has a lot more of the existential dread because it ended with you dying. And with a lot of time loop stories, that takes a while for you to get over. Because most people only die once. There are a few instances of people living after being killed, but very few cases of those in history. I can think of maybe two. So, yeah, not really something humans are meant to do. Then after they go through that initial point of like, oh, what's going on here? And they kind of either are filled with horror and dread at it or with ecstasy at being able to just do whatever they want. So then usually afterwards, the story usually kicks in at some point after the character has been living their life either in denial of what's happening or in joy at being able to do whatever they wanted day after day. There will usually be something that causes them to go forward, to eventually break the loop. There are some cool instances I've seen of it where characters know how to break the loop, but they don't want to because that would then get rid of this consequenceless life, or there's something in the loop that they are looking to hold on to. But that's not really something I want to get into too much right now because those are for other stories that I don't want to talk about here and not what I want to talk about today. All You Need to Kill, better likely known for the Tom Cruise movie with Emily Blunt and Tom Cruise. We're not here discussing the movie aspect because, in my opinion, the movie has one thing they did better. The manga is what we're going to be focusing on, though, because that is what I've read. I have not read the original light novel by Hitoshi Sakurazaka, but the manga is more or less a one-to-one interpretation and adaptation of the light novel. I think there are some aspects that were lost. I mean, just look at this. That's sick. I'll be occasionally pulling up images from the manga to maybe punctuate points. I'm mainly just going to be sitting in front of this spiral, though. So, hey, are you subscribed yet? So it follows Keiji Kiryu as he is waking up from his first day, as he wakes up from what he initially thinks is a dream where he died. And then he wakes up, kind of in the same sort of situation that he remembers. Really weird dream. His one roommate, Jin Yanabara, gives him a waiver that essentially says whoever dies in the next battle was the one that stole the booze that they're going to be drinking that night. And this is his first clue that something's off because he remembers already signing this waiver. And he is continually stuck in the funk that, oh, we're going into battle today. And where in reality, it's the next day. But he's already lived that, so he's a little freaked out by that. Then the story follows him as he's adopting. He fills in on what's happening to Earth, that the mimics have invaded Earth. We don't really know much about them. We will know nothing more about them aside from some of their science fiction-y elements that we'll get to eventually. And the only other thing is that they've attacked a lot of the Earth, and, well, everywhere they go, they turn water, earth, mud, any living organism into this weird sludge that helps them survive, but is toxic to humanity, and therefore we have to push them back as much as possible. The one thing that I think initially intrigues me is, okay, so we're fighting a war against these mimics that can create basically a toxic environment for humanity. The story doesn't really get into any elements of, can we reverse it? It kind of is just like, yeah, so anywhere the mimics have been, you can't live there anymore. And therefore we need to stop them as much as possible. And that's been a losing side of this war, which on its surface, very interesting idea, but I would kind of like some more world building. But we are also in the first pages. And that's also not the focus of the story, really. So we continue to follow Kiria, as he goes about. He remembers some things. He predicts that they're going to have 3 hours of push-ups. That's not fun. He ends up staring at the Full Metal Bitch, known as Rita Vertasky. I will come back to her name because I don't understand it. And I made a funny note here that in this panel, it's just 4 muscle heads. I can put it on the green screen. What am I doing? In this panel here, it's 4 muscle heads and a lolly. So I just thought it was funny. And yeah, we get introduced to Rita. We find out that she's the best of the best, and she's very small compared to everyone else. Foreshadowing. There is a reason for that. She intercedes on their workout. She joins them for push-ups, and it doesn't last as long because she's there. Then he goes back. He spends the night reading his book instead of drinking with the guys that the waiver was for. And he spends the night just like having butterflies because, yeah, I would probably have butterflies too if I was about to ship off to battle. Honestly, all of us would. Can you imagine that feeling? Just you've had this weird dream where you died already. You remember certain events that happened, and then you have to go face battle again after dying. Very interesting idea. Also, there's a lot of Valhalla stuff possibly you could glean from that, but goes into his first battle. He's with his guy, Yasabashi. I don't think that's his name. Face mimics. They're more terrifying than he thought. And then he gets his neck blown up and he dies. He then wakes up in his bed, repeating the exact same day again. This kind of happens... Oh, shoot, I ripped the page. Oh, no. So, in the context of the story, this is actually his second loop. Or no, this is his second loop, third time waking up on this day. And he distinctly remembers dying. He remembers his book that he was reading. He remembers what happens. He remembers what's going on, and it promptly decides to run away. He runs into the lunch lady, Rachel Kisaragi, and then he gets dismissed from PT for the afternoon because he got a cut on his forehead. Runs away from the base. He just abandons. He died twice. He doesn't want to deal with it. Abandons his military post, is deserting, runs all the way to the countryside, meets this old guy and a child, and then promptly gets killed by a mimic. This is foreshadowing for the story later on, but for right now, all we know is that a mimic found him and killed him. And this is honestly a very brutal scene of him getting killed. I was like, ooh. I've read a fair portion of Junji Ito, and this is not as disturbing, but this shot did remind me of it. So then he wakes up again, same day. This one is the one where he unalives himself. He asks his bro Yanobaru, that's his name, Yanobaru, because he's a sergeant and has... Oh, no, he's a corporal. He's a corporal. He has a sidearm, and the guy uses it to... I think you know what he does with it. He then wakes up again, realizing the fact he cannot escape this, and this is where we get to the meat and potatoes of what I want to discuss. Because we have this little monologue from Keiji of how I'm the only one in this world who has to keep fighting against the fear of dying. Fine, I'll do it. If staying alive is the only way to get back at this world, then I'll fight my way through to the very end. I died in a battle twice. I died by the sea once, and I died here once. So this is my 5th time around, and this small number is where my war begins. That's the end of the first chapter of the manga, and where we really want to take this video. See, the next few chapters are him learning to fight. He remembers his first time around the loop, and he remembers he met Rita Rubisky on the battlefield. He remembers dying he died while defeating a mimic with an antenna on its head. This is also where he discovers that he can change the day by doing or not doing certain actions, because he had on the first loop looked at Rita. On this loop he did not, and therefore she did not join them on their PT, so they had to do full 3 hours. And he seeks out the sergeant. I mean, look at this guy. For some training. It's pretty fun. And he essentially reinforces the idea of this book. Keiji asks if he can train with the sergeant. Forget it. It's pointless. What? Okay, maybe saying it's pointless is too extreme. You ever heard of the expression Kiri Obiru? I think that's horrible pronunciation. I'm sorry. It's an old samurai saying that means strike down your enemy and learn. Tsukahara Bokudun Miyamoto Musashi, master swordsman who killed uncountable numbers of people in uncountable numbers of battles. They just kept killing. The only way to learn how to do that is to experience it in battle. The guys who survive the battle will learn a thing or two from it. So, an uncountable number of battles. That's perfect for me. we learn of this type of fighting where you basically struggle, make it out, learn some more. It doesn't really fit or make sense to me that he would say it's pointless, because those guys, as far as I'm aware, weren't stuck in a time loop, but it's very fitting for the predicament of Kiji. And he enters into the loop. He learns to run without auto stabilizers. He changes weapons because he realizes his gun, it doesn't have enough and ammo to be able to take out enough mimics. And he just struggles and struggles to fight against the mimics, to conquer his fear of them and to be able to fight through them. See, what I said about this being the point where I wanted to discuss the story is we see here that loop that I was talking about in the beginning. He is now in the insanity loop. He is attempting to bust through this time loop by learning and repeating the same movements, the same actions. Not too unlike these memes. He is attempting to just brute force his way through. Now, it's not complete insanity because he is trying to train and learn how to better himself so that he doesn't die as fast by learning how to walk in the suit, being able to maneuver it, figuring out what weapons work best, eventually deciding that a melee weapon is indeed the best choice, much similar to the type of weapon that Rita Verbinski uses, a massive battle axe, that it weighs 200 kilograms. That's heavy. I don't know how heavy 200 kilograms is because I'm American, but I think that's more than a few cheeseburgers. 3 cheeseburgers to be specific, depending on what restaurants you go to. And this is also where we get to see the point I want to get at and the reason for this video. See, the story of All You Need to Kill isn't amazing, but it is fantastic. What I mean by that is it brings up a feeling and a desire that most people nowadays experience and feel, be it in their real life with sports, schooling, academics, projects that they have to do, maybe in their jobs they have to overcome difficulties in education or experience, or maybe it's as much as figuring out a way to beat a boss in a video game. Again, look at those memes. You and I, every day, encounter this feeling that we are stuck in a loop. And I see it all the more nowadays as I've spent so many years being online, chronically so, of people doing the classic, feel horrible about myself, I'm not getting anything done. Then at 3 a.m., have the resolve to change their life, flip it around. All for it to go away as they awake from that resolve in the new day, back where they were the previous night, before they had the resolve to do so. We, in our modern age, have developed an intense feeling of apathy, of anxiety and of lethargy that does not allow us to brazenly go forward, to push ahead, to achieve something more. That's why we love stories about these amazing athletes, these people that have overcome adversity after adversity because they had the grit to do it. And I very much think each and every one of us feel that to some extent. Like, there are obviously people that have stumbled across success, but most people have to claw and claw and claw for it. And something else that really makes me feel this way is my personal journey. See, I have been making YouTube videos for close to, well, it's probably been about a decade, honestly. I started when I was like 11 or 12, making videos, uploading to a channel. Most of those videos are now not public, but a few of them are. And I have spent the last 2.5 years pursuing a career in this because I don't know what else I want to do with my life. And I've spent the last 2 years stuck in that loop. I spend most of my time agonizing over not achieving anything. I spend most of my time looping as I try to figure out what it is I need to do to make a step forward to get past the current hurdle I'm in. See, I hit a point in 2022 where I was uploading 2 videos a day for a grand total of somewhere between 600 and 700 videos for the year of 2022. I forced myself into a loop of creating content to build something to hopefully launch a career. And then I burned myself out. And I've been burnt out pretty much ever since. And that created a new loop that I had inadvertently created for myself, where I was stuck, concerned that anything I make would not be good enough because I spent so much time, in my opinion, creating slop content. I realized that was not what I wanted to spend most of my time doing. And especially now, I want to put more effort into content. But what is really hurtful for me is when I look at how that has impacted my ministry on Twitch, my life in general, and how it has led to an apathy that I do not fully embrace failure. I go through the steps of making a video in my head. I go through the steps of live streaming, and then I do not because I've already surmised I will fail and I cannot succeed because I tried already. That is what was so impactful about this video, or this manga. I was recommended by a friend to play some Elden Ring because he needed some footage of Elden Ring for a video he was making. Who knows what? Check him out. When that happened, for some reason, I had just read this manga. I've now read this manga a few times, but I had just read that at the time of him saying that. And I was entranced by the idea of looping in a video game, which is essentially what this book is. Kathryn Hemmann made an article essentially describing this exact thing, that the story of All You Need to Kill is the level progression and level design of a video game. If you want to, go check her out. She's done a lot of other articles on contemporary Japanese media. I'll link her below. But what really stuck out to me about this article, and in my initial reading of it, and this my friend's request to capture some footage for Elden Ring, I realized and saw in the blink of an eye the importance of a video game story. See, we don't really understand fully what it means to try your hardest until death. We experience it every time we pick up that controller to face a boss that has beat us again and again. Every time you try to attempt that pod racer level from LEGO Star Wars 2. Every time you faced a boss in a Souls-like. Every time you faced Malenia, Blade of Nicolia. You enter into the loop of all you need is kill. You only need to kill. There is nothing else important to you in those moments aside from taking the next swing, taking the next step, rolling to the left, rolling to the right, dodging, power stancing. There is nothing more important than being able to get in that position and to take the shot to end whatever threat lies before you. And that is something that I have been missing in my life. And something that I think you all have been missing as well. Otherwise, I wouldn't see so many posts about people being so adamant about wanting to turn their life around, wanting to change their circumstances, being able to do something with their life. I wouldn't see so many people feeling like I've wasted my time, because we don't have that desire to change so adamantly as we do when we face death in a video game. All You Need to Kill, Keiji, has that because he has faced death over and over and over again. And we enter into this montage where he is killing over and over and over again. He's getting killed over and over and over again. He experiences death over and over and over again because he resolves in himself to face tomorrow, to live and to survive. That is what makes his progression so impactful to me. I am impacted by his willingness to die over and over for a cause. And that is something that really hit me when I was reading this, because I mentioned earlier about how I've been feeling in a loop, stuck in this apathetic sense because I haven't been streaming or making videos as much because I don't believe they're good enough, or I believe that the eventual end is just failure, so there's no reason to. Another thing that's very important to me is my faith in Jesus. And Jesus has asked everyone that believes in him to have the same approach to life. Have so much faith and trust in our Lord that we would die and die again. Philippians 1:21. For me, living is Christ, dying is gain. Now, if I live on in the flesh, that means fruitful work for me and I don't know which one I should choose. Romans 14:7. For none of us lives to himself, and no one dies to himself. If we live for the Lord, and if we die for the Lord. Therefore, whether we live or die, we belong to the Lord. Christ died and came to life for this, that he might rule over both the dead and the living. I'm addressing we as in me and the other believers I know, are called to die to ourselves, to carry the cross. We are each meant to carry our cross, to risk dying for a cause that can save so many. Everyone has the opportunity to meet and greet Jesus. Meet and greet, that classic thing. And not all of us will, because some have hardened hearts, and some never meet the message, never hear the message. There's some deeper theology there, but that's not what I want to get at right now. What I want to get at is the heart of a believer should be for dying every day. Every time we pick up our life, we look at it, we should be thinking about how can we advance the gospel. And that is what I find so fascinating about All You Need Is Kill. Because here we have a story about just a guy who doesn't believe in anything greater, who is willing to go forward because he sees the worth in dying, to eventually make it out of there alive. He does not want to die. He wants to live, and to achieve that, he dies again and again, dying over and over so that he may advance one more step. And that is what I found truly fascinating about this, because I do not live that way. I highly doubt many people live that way. Many people do not live with a greater sense beyond just being comfortable and living their life. But as a Christian, I should have that confidence and that comfortability to be able to live my life, knowing that on the other side, Jesus is waiting with open arms. And that is what hit me as I was reading this story. And it raises a bigger question as to why do we struggle so much when we have so much to gain? Why do we struggle so much with accepting that there's going to be hardship in the moment? Why are we not willing to embrace the hardship of everyday life, of approaching people about Jesus? Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. There's a lot more that could be said about the spirit and such, and why people don't feel confident. That's not really what I wanted to discuss with this video. What I do want to discuss is the rest of All You Need to Kill. All you need is kill. All you need is kill. I've been saying all you need to kill. Crap. All you need is kill. Because, well, I'm not going to just leave you hanging. I'm not going to leave you in the middle of him, Kenji dying over and over again. I'm going to finish the story for you. Yeesh, I'm not a monster. Come on, guys. You should know me by now. All right. So he's entered into this loop where he just dies over and over again. He has figured out a routine where he will train with the Sarge in the morning. Well, he'll do PT, he'll train with the Sarge, and as I mentioned, he eventually realizes he needs a weapon capable of keeping up with him after he kills countless mimics. And that weapon is a battle axe, much akin to the one that Rita Rubinski. Burkowski? Breck. I forgot her last name. Virginsky. So he breaks into the area where the mechanic is working on the jackets, the armor that they wear going into battles. I didn't mention that earlier, but sorry, I forgot. And he's able to get her to build him a weapon, a battle axe much similar to the one that Rita uses. He has done this a few times when we meet him, or when we see this play out in the book, because he already knows what she needs, which is a memory card. And he learns a little bit more about Rita as he talks with the mechanic, but not too much. He determines he needs the battle axe, as I said, and he is able to get the axe and begin to use that to fight. I mean, look at the shot. Isn't this shot amazing? The shot of the battle axe. This shot is pretty cool. Come on, guys. There's this moment in the cafeteria where he gets into a fight with this guy because he was looking very sour and glum after having died over and over and over again while eating food. He easily beats the guy until he misjudges a punch, because the girl that kind of had initially initiated the fight, because someone got in the way of the fight, which was the lunch lady. Lunch lady then takes him back to the kitchen and nurses him back after getting a black eye. He has a flashback to the previous loop when he did grandstanding that got the Sarge killed. The kitchen aide then asks if he wants to spend the evening with her because she has nothing else going on. Aside from the classic example of bully goes over, intimidates guy getting bullied, shows off skills, and then takes the final blow as to be the better man kind of scenario. And that's the only reason why she's kind of interested in him. We learned, though, that the reason for him joining the army, a librarian. I mean, that is just the same person. I don't know how the KitchenAid just kind of lost her memories about him, but maybe it's because he admitted he didn't even have the courage to talk to her. So let me get this straight, and let me elucidate you guys on this. It is easier for a man to die repeatedly, hundreds of times, than to confess their love for a woman. Everyone keep that in mind as you go out, as you finish watching this video, that dying is way easier to a man than it is to confess their love. I agree. I would much rather jump into a pit of piranha. That being said, pretty typical reason for him to join the army, and his agency doesn't make a lot of sense now for why he wants to live, because he doesn't really have anything on the outside of the war for him to go back to. His parents are dead, and he's just got the military, and he's like becoming a great soldier, but he's kind of just like chilling. He uses this opportunity to resolve himself that now isn't time for love, and to go back out onto the field and die. And he did that a lot of times. He did a lot of times, my goodness. He did like 60 or so more loops of him just dying trying to figure out how to use the battle axe. And some of these shots are pretty haunting. I mean, look at that. That's pretty haunting. Till eventually he gets so good at it, he becomes the point man for his unit, and they kind of just rally around him as he leads the charge, and he runs into Rita Verchasky. And she asks, "You there? How many loops is this for you?" Then cut to black, and we get a bunch of backstory for because we don't actually know her name. Turns out Rita Verchinsky is actually her fake name that she took, because, as we find out, she lived in Pittsfield, Illinois. I don't know if that's a real place, but I do know Illinois is a real place, and I'm sorry if you live there. So it says a small town of 4,000 people. The town I live in is smaller. Just saying. It's not small. That's a lot of people. But we learned that she's kind of a happy-go-lucky kid. She lives with her parents. Her dad is a retired boxer, I think. Oh, no, he used jiu-jitsu. Kaizen. Shibuya arc. And we get a very good look at that this girl that would eventually become Rita Verbinski is content to live her life in the boondocks with her family, kind of just enjoying the nature, enjoying the fun love of being a country girl. I can't blame her. Country loving is great. I mean, I live in the country. It's fantastic. And it all ends when the mimics attack. Woohoo, who would have known? Ooh, shocker. Small child that doesn't want to move out and doesn't want to join the defense army gets her family wiped out and therefore joins the army. Woohoo, what a shocker. So in defense of his family, her father, we don't know his name, dies, and his mother, her mother was already wounded by the mimic, and she dies while sheltering from the attack in their storm cellar. Immediately after this, she joins the defense army under a fake ID, and she is like 16, I think. She's supposed to be like 16 or so. So that's kind of why she's so young looking, because she is younger than she actually is, because the age-old thing, at least that I'm aware of, everyone lying about their age to get into the military when their entire livelihood is taken from them. I mean, it's a real thing. I don't really have anything else to say about it. So let's get back to the video. Whew. And she has much the same way that she wants to kill every mimic on the planet. Woohoo. I was wrong. This is actually where we learn about the mimics and what they do to Earth. We don't even learn that at the beginning of the manga. We learned that halfway through the manga. I'm a big fat phony liar. I'm sorry. And then we follow Rita as she goes through her first loop, realizes that she's looping, realizes what's the best way to kill. She eventually gets I think she just gets an axe. Like, I don't think it's really mentioned how she got the axe. I think she was just like, oh, I need a melee weapon, so she got a big axe. The way that you enter a loop is by destroying a relay mimic. A mimic that is viewing the battle, seeing how it's going, and then will send information back through time to give the higher-ups a better understanding of how to win the battle. In killing one of those, you can sort of adapt and develop their abilities. And what it comes to realize is that you can essentially just repeat the battle over and over and over again to eventually figure out the best outcome for it. And Rita does that for this battle that she has been in. And upon defeating the mimic server, she finds out her lieutenant died that loop, whereas all the other loops he had survived. And then she resolved herself to continue the fight, more or less swearing off people because she doesn't want to get too close to people that essentially are just cannon fodder for this battle, because her end goal is to destroy all the mimics. Human lives don't really matter, right? Fairly heartless. I'll just say that. Fairly heartless, my goodness. She also tells the government about how she discovered this ability to loop, which I don't fully understand this aspect of the story. Because you're saying that Rita is able to show and prove to the government that the aliens have this ability to loop through time, and that she can go forward and kill the Mimic server, be able to take over the power of copying that day, of repeating that day, to give the best outcome. But the rest of the army doesn't seem to know. It's only kept within the higher-ups and Rita. Because it expressly says that she has at some point it says her typical system is to loop the day once, see what happens, and then beat the loop on the second day. So she spends her time alone, looping back for each battle once. She's become very powerful, able to take on everything by herself, essentially, getting the nickname the Valkyrie, and also the nickname the Full Metal Bitch, out of respect for some reason. I think the Valkyrie is just fine. I don't fully understand the Full Metal Bitch. It's not really explained, and I don't understand it. I don't get it. Like, it's a sign of respect, but how? She also already has a really cool nickname, the Valkyrie. Anyways, besides the point. She then goes forward, looping for each battle, and hopefully finding someone else that has looped. She has this habit of asking people questions that are region specific, that someone in a country would understand and know the answer to. And her hope is to eventually find someone that has that answer to that question without her having asked it that loop, as proof that they'd already heard the question asked. She spent 3 years doing this, so she's fairly lonely, spending her day just chilling by herself. And then the fast forward to her in Japan now, and she comes across Keiji. She recognizes the look in Keiji's eyes as something that she's seen in herself, looking into the mirror, and approaches him to ask him some questions. It's also very interesting to see this play out, because for 4 chapters we've been following Rita, and then we get to see Keiji from the outside perspective and how terrible he looks. He looks absolutely awful as he's going through this cycle, until he eventually is able to talk to Rita, because he learns that she has done the loop as well. She understands this, and that they can go forward to talk this through. She recognizes some things about Keiji that she's like, this guy seems to know what he's doing, because he has the saunter of someone that knows how to walk in a jacket. She asks him, what is the number written on your hand? And then, before he does that, he answers the question that she had asked him the previous day on the battlefield. It's a question you asked me tomorrow when I was dying. It's true, Japanese restaurants don't charge for green tea. Which is something funny, because he learned that by reading the book that he was reading earlier, that he would spend his nights reading. He learned that in that book. So even though he grew up in Japan, he learned it from the book. So essentially, if he didn't read that book, he wouldn't be able to answer a question. He would just be able to be like, yeah, you asked me that question. I don't actually know. I'm unaware. You're going to have to maybe inform me. I'm the stupid one here. She then breaks into tears at the finally meeting someone that has gone through the loop as well. We then switch over to Keiji again, and we get to see that To him, she looks like a very normal girl, a very ordinary girl. This is now the final act. Before I want to discuss that, I want to bring up the biggest thing that I saw from the actual story character perspective, because we have here a story with two main protagonists. We spend the first 8 chapters with Keiji, then we spend 4 chapters with Rita, and then we spend the last 4 chapters again with Keiji again. Though the final 4, they're both together, so it's not like he's just alone discussing how he's died and how he made it 57 minutes into this battle, or he figured out the best way to optimally use the battle axe. But what we find, and what I find, is Rita is a much better character, even though we've had way less time with her. Her purpose and her fight, her character, is a lot more filled out than whatever we got with Keiji. Keiji, as I explained, his whole reason for being in the army is because he didn't even have the courage to approach and tell a girl that he loved her. And so he ran off to the military. Now, you could say some of that is so that he could find purpose outside of that. Fair enough. But we get a lot more of that from the Rita side of it. We get to see someone that personally was hands-on impacted by the death of her parents, by the mimics, the main antagonist, and the villain of the story. We get to see as she develops and comes to realize that there are consequences to being able to loop, to being able to go through time, same day over and over again. She becomes apathetic towards relationships. She becomes apathetic towards life in general, because she is so distraught by solely being the one to loop again and again. She does not have... She's very much looking for someone as a savior for her, which is what Keiji is. Whereas Keiji was kind of already the way he was before he even started fighting. Like, before he got into the loop, he kind of was already a loner. He didn't really have much going for him. He wasn't very much of a dynamic character. We get introduced to his character as I'm stuck in a time loop. Oh no! Whereas with Rita, we're introduced to her before she even got into the battle. And because she was battling even before she got into the time loop. Before she faced the first Mimic server, she had been through countless battles already. So she was already hardened to some extent. She gets to see what living through these battles means on a deeper level. Whereas Keiji, this is his very first battle he's ever done. That he just so happened to be able to kill a Mimic server on his first run. And because of that, he is stuck in a infinitely smaller loop where he doesn't actually experience the effects of living through a loop, successfully bringing about the victory. And I'll loop back to this. See what I did there? I'm so funny. I'll loop back to this at the end. But for right now, let's continue on. So Keiji and what's-her-face concoct for the next battle the next day after the first time we see them interacting. The next day they decide to join up and go after the Mimic servers and the relays. See, something I didn't mention earlier about how she is able to beat the loop, is by taking out the Mimic server and then taking out the relays that are backups of the server, because if not, they loop the day again. So she and Keiji embark on their mission to defeat the servers and the relays. In this, we get to see that because Keiji has learned how to fight with his axe from Rita, they can work in perfect sync together. They don't even need to really communicate. They understand how to battle with each other, making up for each other's differences, making up a better team on it, ultimately. And because the mimics view him as the anomalous mimic server, this is why he's always died to a mimic, because they always track him down. They can always signal locate him and kill him, because what's this guy doing? What is this thing? How is a human a server? And then they do it. They destroy the antenna, and it's over. But it isn't. Keiji, see, it's a little uncertain to me exactly if this means he died or what, because we go from him killing the final mimic server and the backups to him waking up again. We don't know if that means he died or if he, after he killed the server, he just woke up. But what we do know is something is seriously wrong. That there's something wrong with the loop. And that's why on his 160th attempt, he approaches Rita and informs her that it didn't work. In doing so, they have a nice moment of bonding. Keiji has this moment where he realizes this Rita doesn't know anything about me. As long as I'm caught in this loop, I'll always be meeting Rita for the first time. So he'll remember having conversations with her. She won't. In this bonding moment, Rita informs him that she likes the color blue. She likes the desolateness of this part of the base because it reminds her of home, of what she lost. He asks her why her jacket is red, and she kind of just ignores it. They have some more banter. She realizes that, something didn't go right in the future, and she laughs at the fact that she's able to hear what happens in the future from someone else. It'll be fun being the one outside the time loop for a change. There's this funny scene where they both eat pickled plums until their lips are turned red. It's pretty nice. It shows that for both of them, they haven't really had time to engage with other people since they've been stuck in this loop, because what can you really talk about with someone if you have lived the same day hundreds of times? You get to know everything without being able to share it with someone else. You don't get to hear anything new. You don't get to experience anything new. But with this, he has found someone that he's able to do that. So he goes back to her sky lounge. They spend the night getting to know tomorrow. Keiji remarks, "I didn't want to lose this today, the day I spent together with Rita. But in order to do that, I have to survive tomorrow." And then this is the first morning where he wakes up in the Sky Lounge with Rita. There's some weird panels here that I don't really know how to interpret, aside from possibly that they spent the night together, but it's not too weird. I don't know, it's a little weird. I can't really decide, especially with how we'll well, there seems to be some weird like tension here, which for the reader, it's pretty clear it's because Keiji is falling for Rita, but it's also kind of implied that there's some sort of they got close in a biblical sense the previous night, but I don't really know if that's the case. Anyways, they share this time, their morning, talking about coffee, having a nice chat about the proper way to do it, how to not let it get moldy, because who would want to drink moldy coffee? And they talk about, hey, this war will be over someday. And they spend their few moments drinking oh wait, no they don't. Mimic attack. Oh no, mimics are attacking. Oh no, guys, that's awful. Who could have foreseen this? Oh no. And they find out that the base is under attack by the mimics. They deduce that that's because they've acted as relays for too long, and that that mimics don't think that they can win the battle the next day. Or I guess the mimics think, oh, this is the best way for us to win, is to take them out of the source. I mean, arguably so. Yeah, I agree. So they go down, they suit up, and they lead a rescue effort to destroy the mimics while saving people at the base. They spend most of the day fighting. There's a really hard line by Keiji where he says, I don't think the battle needs us either, but I need this battle. He's hit a point now where he just needs to fight. He just needs to feel the mimic blood underneath his fingernails. So they both rush off in their jackets. And then they fight. Take out all the mimics. There's some more fun stuff where they work together because they know each other's moves. They run into Sarge. They save Sarge, save a bunch of the side characters we've seen along the way. Lunch Lady, Yanabaru. And then they ask the question. I did that during the 159th loop, but it failed. Does Rita have some other plan to get out of this loop? They enact their plan to take out the servers and the relays and the backups. But they had successfully done that before. So what is the new plan here? They go out, they destroy the servers, and then Rita attacks Keiji. As it turns out, the only way for them to get out of this loop is for one of them to die. As Rita explains, when a mimic judges that the situation is against them, they send a signal back into the past using their antennae. We get dragged into that mimic time loop because our brains picked up that signal. Our brains, right? Continuously going through that loop means we receive that signal over and over again. And by doing that, our brains adapted. We became the antennas. The migraines are a side effect. I didn't mention this, but they both were going through major migraines throughout the story. It's kind of brought up, and it's like, okay, this got to lead somewhere, or it could have just been the fact that they're experiencing migraines because their bodies aren't meant to be looping through time like that. You've had them too. What are you talking about? That's why the loop repeated last time, even though you destroyed the backups. In other words, as long as the backup antennae known as Keiji Kiria exists, Rita Vrataski can escape the loops. And as long as the backup antenna known as Rita Vrataski exists, Keiji Kiria can escape the loops. Only one of us can escape. That means one of us has to die. If humanity is going to win, we need someone who can break the loop. Now we find out whether that someone is Rita or Keiji. Next is a intense battle between Rita and Keiji as they're both destroying the base while attacking each other. They battle through the kitchen, destroying some vegetables. Can't believe they would do that to the poor kitchen lady. Destroying more parts of the base, getting their armor ripped up. And now we come to what and as their armor is getting ripped up, Keiji resolves himself to survive the battle and kill Rita. I promised myself the day I wrote the number 5 on my left hand that I would fight against this world, that I would survive. I don't mind losing after putting everything into this fight, but I can't give up here and die. So he resolves himself to at least fight Rita and see if he survives or not, knowing that this is going to be would either be his final battle in this loop or his final death. There's some more monologuing by him. He is able to break off parts of Rita's jacket, and they continue to battle on and fight before a final hurrah where the victor is decided. To Keiji Kiryu, Rita Vertasky was without a doubt the goddess of the battlefield. I improved my skills by watching her fight, unlike Rita, who had been fighting the mimics all on her own. So I knew when Rita would swing her weapon and how she would make her next move. Keiji lands the final blow on Rita. Rita explains that she knew ever since she got the first mimic signal, the battle would always end this way, and that Keiji would be the one to make it out of this loop. We then have a final touching moment between Rita and Keiji. Keiji says, "I'll stay with you until you die. I love you." Rita responds with, "Good. I didn't want to die alone." Hold up. That's not exactly what I was expecting, or I think he was hoping to hear. And then her final words to Keiji are, "I hate red skies." Hey, camera. And Rita's final words to Keiji are, "I hate red skies." Finally giving the answer as to why her jacket is red. He then destroys the final mimic server, mopped up the stragglers, was thrown in prison for killing Rita killing the Valkyrie of the battlefield. Then 3 days later, they gave him a medal, the same medal that Rita had received in the past, and he gets transferred over to the special division that Rita was a part of. He gets his own call sign, Killer Cage, and decides to paint his jacket sky blue after Rita's favorite color. Drinking that coffee that they weren't able to drink their final morning together. Now moldy. And that is the end of All You Need Is Kill. See, I talked about why I found this story so impactful and why I enjoy this story so much. And I still enjoy reading the entire manga. Like, it's a fun blast from beginning to end. But especially at the end of it, there are some concerns I have with the story. All You Need Is Kill, as I said, is a fantastic story, but not amazing. See, I enjoy this story. I will occasionally just read through it, like as I said, I'll read through it, and this final time was when I decided to make a video on it. But what really stood out to me as I was reading it this time is the story elements that don't quite work out as well, that I don't think work as well from a narrative perspective. See, I already explained how I think Rita is a better character than Keiji, but I don't fully understand why Rita's character wasn't the main focus from the beginning. When I look at the final chapters of the story, the narrative doesn't fully line up, in my opinion, to the message of the story. See, for Rita, the fact that she was going to die seemed to be apparent from the very beginning. Apparently, the very beginning of the loop. There are some questions that I still have about how exactly she knew, because it became apparent that they both killed a server and were stuck in the loop, both becoming relays to the Mimic system. That one of them needed to die so that they could actually escape from the system. It doesn't seem to make sense to me if Rita had experienced the same level of time with Keiji, as Keiji seemed to, Keiji even only seemed to spend a few days with her before developing feelings and falling in love. But it isn't made apparent if she got to know him the same level. See, Keiji falls in love with Rita. Rita does not seem to have reciprocated those feelings, and then he confesses his love before killing her. I do not like that from a narrative perspective, because of how Keiji is such a weaker character than what Rita is. Rita has a lot more staying power and reason to continue to fight. And I think it would have been more fascinating to see Keiji in the final moments decide to sacrifice himself for Rita, still professing his love, but acting out his love in a sacrificial way to show that he cared about her more so than just confessing his love after you did the killing blow. It would also lead it to a more fulfilled arc for him, because at the beginning we get him where he's willing to battle and to fight and to kill to make it out of the loop. But it would have been more satisfying if he had ultimately decided to not leave the loop, to let the person that he loved make it out of the loop. This is something that I think is actually done better in the movie Edge of Tomorrow, because we have a whole sequence in there where Tom Cruise's character and Emily Blunt's character are both trying to figure out how to make it out of this loop. And it becomes apparent that Tom Cruise's character is not willing to go through with the loop, because the way that they had been going, Emily Blunt's character had always died. So he was trying to just live out in the moment before finally accepting that she either had to die or they needed to figure out something else. But he was so content to just continue to live out the loops with each other again and again, day after day, making those connections for the first time in her case. Much the same way to how this is the first time they did a loop was the first time they made connections. The second time, still first connections. Much like 50 First Dates. And I think it would have been more impactful to see him give up his life in the end to fully embrace those feelings. For her to fully grasp what he was willing to do and what he ultimately did for her. We have Rita, who seems to know that she dies. So has she lived through this loop multiple times? How would she know that she dies from the first relay? How would she know? But how would she fully grasp what is the future going on? Because we don't really get a look into that loop, because we follow her on the one loop where she encounters Keiji and Keiji tells her the question from the future to indicate that she doesn't seem to remember going through the loop, or even that she is aware that she would end up dying. So maybe that's just something that is lost in the translation from the light novel to the manga, but it leaves a serious hole in my head. Unless I am completely just misinterpreting it and it's not a plot hole and I'm just crazy, I'm sure the comments will tell me. So I just reread the ending again, and I think the interpretation of how she knows that she's going to die is because of the fact that he came back and was like, hey, we tried to do the mimic server relays and all that, the backups, and it didn't work. And therefore, she, I think, just had enough understanding of how the relays and the servers worked and the backups that she would just have to, that she would more than likely end up dying. Maybe it was because of the same thing that Keiji learned how to fight from her, whereas she had to figure out how to fight. So he ultimately is a better weapon and soldier than she is. Still not too crystal clear to me, and I don't fully like it as an explanation, but it is an explanation. And what I think is the biggest thing that I want to kind of end on is how we get this story that isn't that isn't amazing, but it is fantastic. I keep saying that. I think where I'm left, though, is that I want to see if the story can become better than what it is right now. Because the movie, I think, is a weaker thing overall, but it had better grasp of how to do character story arcs better than the original author. And the author of the original light novel, Hitoshi Sakurazaka, is working on a sequel that was announced like a decade ago. So I don't know if it stopped in production or what. And I also know they're making a sequel for the movie as well. Unlike the movie, the manga does not end with them ending the war, so a sequel makes a lot more logical sense. But I am curious to see how and what the author decides to do for a sequel in this story. If it follows Keiji and someone else that comes into the loop and now he takes over the place of Rita, or if it just follows him as he tries to end the war so that he can live a life free of the mimics. And ultimately, I'm excited for that because I think this story could be done better than it is right now. And I think the sequel is a good place for that to take place. Now, we could also just ultimately just get a worse story, but I am hoping and praying that it improves and enlightens upon what the original did. And with that, I want to finish off on this final note. Looping infinitely through time, through your days, through events and activities can be extremely hard. And I think there's a lot to be said about looping through activities from video games. Godspeed. God bless. Peace. I'm hoping that if you watch the entirety of this video, that you are interested at least enough to continue to listen to me talk, and to hopefully continue to listen to me talk as I talk about what I want to be doing next for YouTube and hopefully Twitch. See, I am in a predicament at the moment where I want to, as I mentioned earlier, make more content for videos, and I'm conflicted about how that works into streaming. So I'm hoping to figure out a streaming schedule so that I can at least be consistent, if not online all the time. And with that, I am also going to be entering into a different type of content system than what I've kind of just done up until now. See, if you really follow the channel or anything, you might notice that I have some playlists on YouTube called Seasons. And as you can see, the most recent season we're in is Season 3, the one with these long video essays. And what I want to kind of do from now on is make some videos that are in a season, end the season, take a season break, but maybe like a month or two, and then come back with a new season. I already have the idea for what I'm going to do for Season 4. And that's with me saying that this is the end of Season 3. I know I left with a cliffhanger there, but that's because